Best ever listeners, how you doing? Welcome to the best real estate investing advice ever show. And this is a focus on actually AI. This is the best ever AI how-to focus. And so much about AI is conceptual and what could take place in AI, but this is not that show. This is the show about how to do the things that people talk about. Actually show you how to do it. That's why it's on YouTube, and that's why we've got a screen share going on right now. So with us today, Ismael Reyes. How you doing, Ray?
I'm doing good. How about you, Joe?
Hey,
Thanks for
I'm
having
doing
me.
well. I'm doing well and looking forward to our conversation. Ray has been investing in residential real estate since 2005. He's been focused on multifamily since 2016, investing all over the Sun Belt. And he he spent 28 years in the military. He retired as a lieutenant colonel from the U.S. Army. Thank you, sir, for your service and what you did for our country. That is near and dear to my heart and many others who's listened to the show first and foremost.
Yeah, it was my distinct pleasure to be able to do that. Thank you, Joe.
So today we're going to be talking about the prompts that Ray uses whenever he is working in his business as raising capital and as an operator and fund manager. He's also going to talk about an important concept that doesn't get talked about too much, which is having the privacy and confidentiality of the search queries that you have. That way it's not out there as publicly as it might be if you weren't as intentional about it. So with that being said, Ray, what would you like to share with us first about the maybe the confidentiality part, and then let's go into some prompts that you use.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really a big one, right? I mean, I think people forget that and we're starting to see some cases of people uh going into legal situations and what they put in Chat GPT being used against them, right? And that's one way to think about it. The other way is, if we're, as a fund manager, being a senior partner in a company, and anytime you're dealing with accredited investors and other people's money, we have to figure out how to safeguard that information. So being able to do things that lessen the exposure to potential clients is of the utmost importance. So it's not sexy to be able to kind of do this thing, but it is extremely important. It can make the difference in the long term of who you work with and how successful you are.
How do you have more of a contained system for your searches and when you use AI? And then we'll go into some queries and some practical use cases.
Yeah. So the first one is you have to have the setup, right? So I use three basic systems to do that. The first is called Docker Desktop, and I'll click that on the screen. Hopefully, you guys can see that.
Yeah.
And Docker Desktop allows you to run virtual environments within your desktop and your system, right? So it's a containerized environment. You can run applications. You can do all kinds of things. I won't go into more technical details, but the reality is that that's what allows you to then load. And I use Olama as kind of the place where I go and load these large language models. So I load those models within that containerized system, and then I can run those models inside of my setup without having to go out into the internet to run those queries. So you can imagine. So I've got the setup, and you can see some of the ones that you have here. There's quite a few. The one drawback I would say is it obviously has to fit within your system. So if you don't have a strong enough computer with enough space, they may not work for you. Although you can run some basic ones that don't require a lot of space, right? So you can see this one here is it comes in different versions. There's Llama. You can get an 8-bit 8 version, which is 8 gigs, or you can get 70 gigs, or 400 gigs. And you download that entire learning language model into your system and then run it internally. So
It's like you're downloading an entire chat GPT onto your desktop.
exactly. And if you run a large model like that and you don't have a strong system, one, it probably will crash your system, but two, you may be there for 24 hours, right? So there's some advantages and there's some drawbacks. You just have to know what you can put in there. But really, if you're dealing with anything legal, like if you're reviewing a contract, for example, a PMA, property management agreement, or a partner agreement, or anything like that, you can use the language model and do analysis based on whatever parameters you've set up, right? As you have specific parameters that you want to use for that query, and load up the spreadsheet or the PDF or whatever, and then it'll give you an answer based on that query and what you have, what the model is able to do.
So I imagine when they're doing updates to it, you need to then go re-download the updated version, right? It doesn't automatically update.
And it notifies you of new models that are coming out. Typically, what happens is like the Llama 3.1 will get replaced with Llama 3.2. So then when you load up the new one, you delete the old one. And so there's a little bit of that. But I think that the value is that you do have protections and your clients are protected. So how do you get at this data, right? Because the first one lets you to run the system. The second one loads your models and gives you different models you can download. I use Open Web UI. And Open Web UI essentially allows me, it's a graphical user representation that I can run my queries from. So
help me understand, why do you need the first one, the door, what was it?
Docker desktop.
Yeah, why do you need
Docker,
that? Why can't you just upload or download the large language model onto your desktop?
What that one allows you to do is it downloads it and encapsulates it. So it's separate and it's protected. So there's no way, you have to run the actual Docker desktop to be able to get at the actual language. So it's a type of security.
It's within a
lot of people
bubble.
also use this if they're trying to run apps and they're testing apps and they're beta testing, because it basically secures it from any other exposure out there. So you get the clean model within it.
Okay, makes sense.
So then I use Open Web UI to basically run the queries, and this is free. These are all free tools that you can do. So I mean, one obviously is people are like, well, there's a cost to doing all these things. There's a security aspect, but you can have both. And so right now I've got several models loaded on here, and just like you would use a lot of systems, you can pick what language model you want to run, and then you can use that and you can run a query on that model, right? And so whatever you can do in ChatGPT, you can do here. I think there's there can be some limitations. ChatGPT is obviously very customized, and it allows you to basically within the system create language, or correction. You can customize some of the tools and the searches, so it learns, right? With this setup, it's basically you're already loading up the model. You're not teaching it new things. So you have to have the model that you want. There are other things, and I can talk a little bit more. So that's my internal setup, just as far as running basic queries on here. And
okay. What are the three Docker desktop? Then the second thing, to get the download the language model, where do you go?
So you have to get Docker desktop on your system. Then you have to load up Olama, which is olama.com, and you have to download the actual models that you want to query in the system.
Yep.
And then I use Open Web UI to then do the front end piece of doing my searches, adding images, whatever it is that I want to do and I want to analyze. I use this as my front end, and it's all enclosed.
Oh, that's helpful. And again, that helps maintain privacy for investors if you're dealing with or contracts or whatever else. Just helps keeps it within a contained bubble for less fewer issues to come up from bad people who are trying to hack things.
That's correct. And the other thing is, there's sometimes the models themselves, they get a little too restrictive about what queries you can run. And so by having a model that doesn't have those restrictions, you can run things that essentially aren't, they aren't legal issues. It's sometimes ethical. I'm sure people have run ChatGPT and you ask it something and it says, I'm sorry, I can't give you that answer. It has the answer. It's just blocking it because of some additional program that's built into the tools. By using this, you can load up models that don't have some of those restrictions.
Well, let's talk about now transitioning to, and thank you for sharing that, not discussed very, very often. Now let's talk about things you do in your day-to-day as an operator and fund manager with AI.
Yeah, I think one of the first ones is, and so the last tool I'm going to introduce is what I use when I'm worried. I'm not worried about containers and securities. I use a tool called TriploAI, and that's just another basic tool that I use that works very much like ChatGPT. So I'll pop it up on the screen. I essentially have it loaded on the desktops. It's just a simple. I use control space. You can set it up however you want, but it pops up and it pops out. And so I I can pop it in here. And again, I have access to models that I can then run queries against. One thing to note, and I don't know if you can see that on the screen, but
We can.
those local models that I mentioned, I can actually run it from Triplo without actually having to use the graphical representation. And why that's important is because I can have TriploAI on my phone, and I can do queries on my phone, and it's going to my container to run the searches. In this case, I have it on a desktop as well, so I can pick which one I want to do. But I like TriploAI because it has a lot of different customizations that you can do. The things that we talked about that the other model doesn't allow, that open web UI doesn't really allow you to do, this does. So for example, I'll run a simple query here, or a simple search that I use a lot when I'm talking to people. I have, I on my LinkedIn page, people can schedule a call with me. I have no idea who they are. So they type some basic information, and next thing you know, we're on a call to collaborate, to talk about real estate, or in some cases when they want to invest, or when in those type of conversations. So the first thing I want to do is, who is this person that I'm about to talk to? Sometimes they'll put something on the form. Other times they just put their basic email and phone, and you got to kind of figure it out, right? So I use this tool, and I've created a setup where I can just give it basically I've set up a shortcut, and I'll run a query, and I call it bio summary. So it's essentially a summary of a person that I'm going to talk to. So in this case, I can do, I think I have, just to make it easier to type, I'll do mine, and then I can do yours, Joe, if you want, to see how this breaks out. But it's a bio summary. I have to give it a name, obviously. And then if you can give it information about the company, if you got it, great. And then you can just put down the website. So IsmaelReyes.com, right? So right now I'm asking it to give me information on me. So I just press enter. And right now, just so you know, I'm using this tool here, which is a language model that is in this system already, to ask for it. Some models, Joe, you know this, some models are basically just old data that's been encapsulated. There are other models that let you go into the actual web for new information. This is a model that actually lets you look at, just like Perplexity, it lets you look at recent information. So it's not just based on old data. So right now,
It gives you these categories that you've already educated on: key points, key career highlights, company context, potential conversation starters. Nice.
Yeah, I mean, and think about it. I don't know about, I'm sure you meet tons of people every day, and people want to chat with you about something or other. In some cases, you have a chance of preparing, and some you don't. But whenever you can at least have an idea of who you're going to speak to, especially if it's something important, if you're trying to raise capital, or if you're just trying to network, find partners, this gives you some easy way to just kind of pull open source data on that individual. So I run this constantly. I don't know how many times I've run this, and as simple as that. I can copy it, I can paste it. I typically copy it and paste it to the actual meeting that I have set up, and I use it for my notes. So after I have a call, the other thing it allows me to do, I can do on here, is I can run a summary of a transcript. So let's just say, so in this case, you're recording this call, you can create a transcript of the call, right? There's a bunch of tools that will do that, depending on what system. Zoom has its own transcript. There are other tools that allow you to do that, but I can take that transcript, and then I can just do a summary using another tool that I've set up, and I can do a summary of that transcript. And it'll give me the top things that we talked about. It'll give me tasks that came out of the meeting, and I'll put it in one place, so that I use my my CSM, my system, to basically ensure that all the key data on an individual that I'm working with is in one place. So this is every day. Every day I'm either looking at summaries or not. And so, yes, there are tools that'll give you the summaries for free. Like Fathom is one tool that I use. I have other tools as well, but each one of those tools, depending on how much you want to pay, can add up, right? So there's a way for you to kind of limit that in your workflow, so you're not getting nickel and dimed, and you're still getting the significant data. I think that's important. And then the other piece, obviously, if you don't want to advertise a lot of what you're having in these meetings, and you have that containerized way of creating these summaries and running these prompts.
Right.
The other thing on this system here, and it has a ton of different, so I can create context. So for example, I wrote a book, right? Bottom line up front, about investing in multifamily. I can actually load up the book in the memory as part of context, and then I can ask prompts and queries with that in the back of its mind as it's doing a search. So it's not just, openly searching stuff, it's actually being pointed with context that's critical. So you can do that about a person, about a company, about anything. So in this case, I've already set it up. So when I click on Bluff here, it automatically knows that when I ask it a question, it's gonna look at the book to see and pull stuff from the book. So you can see how you can get very, very deep information that way. And you can ask it whatever, and it'll do that, right? So these are all different ways, and you can use this system. I'm sure most people, like I do, I can type, but sometimes it's I've typed that after I've typed about a sentence or two, I'm like, okay, is this the best way of saying something? And I'll do a simple improve, right? So I'll do improve. You see how I came up here by just typing those 3 letters. I can paste whatever I was typing into here, and the tool will actually create a better way to
system that you're using is TriploAI, correct?
TriploAI, right? And so,
AI.
but there's tons of systems that will that have those sort of capabilities, and you can do shortcuts, right? So this is one that I use. The other thing I like about Triplo is I can actually create a document, a Google document, and I can run my queries. Let me see if I can pull one up here. 1 second. Because I can actually use the system without actually, while I'm actually in a document. Let's just say I'm working on something on a legal document or a contract, and I have a question about something in specific. Let me see if I can pull it up here.
It's pretty intuitive to set up the Triplo. It looks a little daunting from my perspective, but to educate us, was it simple to set up?
It is simple to set up, and I use it every day. I mean, I think that's part of the key is the way that it can be used. And I should have had a document laid out already. Any document that a Google document, you can run Triplo inside of it. And let me see. I'm sure I had something covering my screen now. Pull that out. So let me pull this up, because this is actually when I was thinking about, okay, what are the things that we're going to talk about, Joe? Right? I pulled up this document. I'm like, okay, how can I make this easy to do like a demo while at the same time doing a show, right? And keeping in mind that I'm not running demos as part of my I'm not selling products, right? If we have a deal that we're raising capital for on behalf of an operator that's offering something, it's an operating, memorandum, or there's some sort of document. But this is more how do I use this tool. So right now I was trying to figure out, okay, how do I explain to Joe and the listeners how this works, right? And so I talked about running a query on you, using that same bio summary here, right? So using that same shortcut. And it actually gave me, based on just putting your name, your company, and just a link to one of your websites, Ashcroft Capital gave me basic information about you that I could then, obviously, the better you can point at information that's critical. Like I could have used your LinkedIn page as well, or something open like that would give me information. So that's just another example of using that same bio summary. But just say for example, I was trying to explain how do I use this thing, and I want to use Triplo inside of an actual document. So here's a document, and I can use basically another shortcut, TriploAI, and say, can you make this longer? And I can highlight whatever it is that I'm asking it to make it longer. And I can go Control C, and it's running in the background now. I don't know if you heard the beep.
I did hear it.
Yeah, in the beep, it's actually doing the thinking on Triplo. And then once it's done, it's going to beep again. I think it did it there.
Yeah.
And I can just Control Paste, Control V. It did it.
That's cool.
Right?
You work inside the document like that.
Exactly. So think about if you're working on a legal document, a contract, and there's a particular line on there that you're not understanding, right? You can do one of the things that Triplo allows you to do is basically you can use a prompt like legal. These are all built into the system, or you can create your own. But in this case, legal is one that was kind of built in, and you can load up the document, whatever legal document you want, into it, and it'll summarize the legal documents. And then once it loaded up, you can say, what are some, and I've used this before, and this is where the containerized thing becomes important. Like, what are some things that are advantageous to us that we want to change in this contract? If we want to make this contract a little bit more pro me and less pro whoever, presented it to us. Obviously, whoever does the original documentation is going to kind of put in some language that is beneficial. So I can run that. And then once I have that, then I can use that same prompt here. And I can just put the TriploAI to let it know I want Triplo to do something. I can put the word legal. that is still legal, right? And then I can highlight whatever it is in that document, and I can ask it some specific questions about that line. Hey, can you
Hmm.
rephrase this? What are the risks? So you can do things like that with this. The other obvious thing that you can use Triplo with, and I use it in my business, for example, is if you're basically doing analysis of T12s or financial documents, these sort of things, for an existing deal, for example, you can actually do it for new deals. I think when you're working on new deals, you have to create a lot of front end stuff to make sure you have the right information being plugged in. So it gets to be a little bit harder. So like you need to know what cap rates are, what the current cap rates are. You need to load up a lot of APIs that are available, but they're not free. You got to kind of plug those in, and there are tools that do that. But let's just say you're working on an existing deal that you have, and you're doing a summary for your investors, and you want to just have an idea of how the property's doing. So you can tell it to act as an analyst, act as a financial analyst. You can load up the actual T12, whether it's PDF or the spreadsheet, and it'll look at that document and it'll give you the key highlights of that. And it already is built into the tool to provide certain information on there. And literally, it just gives you
Is
some
that the
results.
standard analyst education, or did you refine it for multifamily?
Yep. This is a standard one that's built into the system, which is
Okay.
pretty good. It gives you NOI based on what it is you're doing. Now, if you give it additional prompt, you can say act as analyst and review this T12 financial for a multifamily property. And so it has a better idea of what it's looking at within that context and give you some better info. But you'll get your NOI. You'll get it also, as part of this prompt, will tell you what looks a little bit strange from one month to another. Because if you feed it a T12 or if you feed it some other document, it's going to look for things to highlight for you that may or may not be right. Now, this is not a perfect tool. This is what it comes with your point of say, can
Sure.
you teach it? And yes, you can. I can actually use this tool and I can create custom instructions for it, depending on what I'm trying to do. If I'm talking to
Yeah.
somebody who wants to invest, I can give it some information and tell it this is the way I want you to approach these answers, right?
Okay.
And you can use different ways to create custom instructions. So the system already knows that it needs to think about these things when it gives an answer. And you can build as many custom instructions as you want. And you can create your own prompts as well. So like in the case where I want to teach it to analyze specific multifamily key performance indicators, I can load that in just like I did context for Bluff. I can create
Sure,
basically
sure.
what are the key parameters for KPIs for multifamily, and I can then create a context just like I did for Bluff. And I can just type in the word KPIs. And when I load up the document, it's going to basically give me that specific information that I've already told that I want. So there's so many ways that you can do this. And it looks daunting, Joe, but really once you start doing it, like I said, I just have to take the time like any tool and
Just getting used to the interface. Yeah, getting used to, like, because most people are probably used to Chat GPT, myself included, but getting used to another AI interface and getting acclimated to it. When I started the podcast, I did not know how to edit an episode, but then eventually I taught myself Audacity and how to edit episodes. This has been great. We need to wrap up. Unfortunately, this has been a lot of really good information, Ray. How can the best ever listeners learn more about what you're doing in your business?
Yeah, I think the easiest ways is going to my website, ismaelrayreyes.com, and then just get on a call with me. We can chat about things. Right now, obviously, I take investors, and we talk about investments, or if you just want to just network a little bit, I'm happy to do that. Now, like you, time is limited, right? So it becomes an issue. If somebody really wants to learn how to use some of these things, we just have to set something up specific for that. But happy to get on a quick call with anybody. In this world, Joe, where we are in our current cycles, and really right now, you always have to be learning something new. If you're not learning something new, then you're probably doing something wrong. You're either learning something new or you're hiring somebody that can learn that stuff for you, right? But it's amazing what is becoming. It took, basically 4 asset managers to kind of do and pull information and kind of correlate things so that you have the right. You can now get AI to do that for you. So you can create really lean teams and still provide value, the value that you were providing before. Yes, there's a little bit of learning that has to go on with that. There is, checks and balances, but the sky's the limit of how you use this thing. And one of the best ways to figure out how to use certain tools, it's just ask it. Go in there and say, what is a good use case for Triplo? And it'll give you a ton of stuff on YouTube and other places where you can learn how to use this stuff and how to apply it to your business models and your workflows.
Well, Ray, this has been informative, impact information. I appreciate you sharing. I hope you have a best ever day and talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Joe.